They told her it was exile, but she knew it was death. No trial, no questions, just one silent order and a steel pod waiting to throw her into space. She stood inside the cold metal cell, her wrists bound with rough rope. Two guards avoided her eyes as they typed the final codes into the pod's control panel. One of them paused for a second, guilt in his eyes, but then looked away. She wasn't a criminal. She had only uncovered something she wasn't supposed to see. Something about the commander, about stolen lives and covered truths. For that, they had decided she must vanish. The countdown began. 5 seconds. 4. The floor shook. 3. Her heart thumped louder than the engines. 2. The stars outside the small window blurred. 1. Then silence. The pod blasted out of the ship, tearing through cold space like a bullet. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only stared ahead, jaw tight, heart burning. If this was the end, she would meet it with her eyes open. Below her, the planet waited. Dark, red, alive. Known by soldiers as Grave Nest, it was a place no one returned from. A planet full of creatures not found in any Earth database. Beasts without names. Skies that burned. Air that could rot skin. Every record about it had one word in common: death. The pod broke through the thick clouds, spinning hard as fire licked the edges. Her body slammed against the seatbelts. Then came the crash. Metal screamed. The pod hit ground. Trees shattered around it. The impact threw her against the wall. For a moment, she lay there, breathless, bruised, but alive. Alive. Smoke filled the small cabin. The door hissed, then opened with a slow, grinding sound. Hot, heavy air rushed in. It smelled like burnt wood, wet earth, and something else, something rotten and wrong. Her ears rang. Her knees shook. But she stepped out. The jungle was black and massive. Trees stood like towers, their leaves jagged and thick. Red vines moved like snakes, even when the wind was still. The sky above glowed red and gray, lit by strange flashes. She took one step forward and heard it. A growl. Deep, heavy, not far away. She ran. She didn't know where, didn't care. The only thought in her mind was move. Sharp leaves tore her skin. Mud swallowed her boots. Behind her, the growl turned into thunder. Footsteps of something big. Something fast. She found a space between two rocks and dove in, her chest heaving. She squeezed herself into the small hole, heart racing. The ground shook. The creature had followed her. It sniffed. She heard it just above her. Slow breaths, low snarls. One wrong move and she would be pulled out like a rabbit from a trap. But she stayed still. Not even a blink. Minutes passed like hours. Then it left. She stayed hidden for a long time after that. When the jungle finally went quiet, she crawled out. Her clothes were torn. Her arms were cut. But her eyes had changed. She made a small fire near a stone wall using broken sticks and sparks from the pod's wreckage. The heat gave her no comfort. She sat there, arms wrapped around her knees, listening. Not to voices. There were no voices here, only death. Screeches echoed from the trees. Roars shook the ground. Something howled from a distance, and something else answered. Tears stung her eyes but didn't fall. She was tired, bleeding, alone, but alive. And that meant something. That meant she still had a choice. They wanted her dead. They wanted her silent, erased from the world. But she was still breathing, still thinking, still angry. She looked at her hands, weak, dirty, shaking, but not broken. Her heart beat fast and hard. Fear lived in her, yes. But under that fear, something else had started to rise. Something darker, stronger. She would not die here. She would change. If this world was full of monsters, she would learn to become one. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. To survive, she had to forget what she was before. She lay down beside the fire, her back against the stone wall. Eyes open, ears listening, muscles ready. The fire snapped once, sending a small spark into the sky. They thought they had buried her on this planet. They had no idea. This world might try to kill her, but she would come back as something they never imagined. The next morning came with no sunlight, only a strange orange glow in the sky, like fire behind thick smoke. The girl opened her eyes slowly, her back sore, her throat dry, and her stomach twisting with hunger. She had survived the first night, but nothing felt like victory. It only felt like a warning. She stood up slowly, every muscle aching. The fire was cold. The stones around her were covered in thin, slimy moss. A few deep footprints nearby showed that something large had walked past her during the night. It had come close, very close, and then left. She didn't know why it hadn't attacked. She stepped carefully through the jungle, her eyes scanning every shadow. Every step felt like a mistake. The ground was soft and full of strange holes. Some hissed when she passed them. Others bubbled with dark liquid that smelled like poison. She avoided them all. Her stomach growled again. She had to eat something. Anything. She searched under trees, inside broken logs, and behind thick roots. She found nothing but black vines and small, sharp-fanged insects that snapped at her fingers. Then she heard it. A sound like crying, but not human. It came from behind a tree covered in red leaves. She approached slowly, crouched low, heart racing. Behind the tree, she found something unexpected. A small creature, like a four-legged lizard, but with soft gray eyes and one broken leg. It was trapped under a fallen branch, whimpering in pain. She froze. The creature looked up at her but didn't growl, didn't run, just stared. She didn't know what came over her. Maybe it was the way the creature looked at her, like it knew pain, like it had also been abandoned. She pushed the branch off its leg. It let out a sharp cry, but didn't bite her. She tore part of her shirt and wrapped it around the wound. She stood, expecting it to run away. It didn't. Instead, it followed her. She didn't trust it, but she didn't chase it away either. It limped behind her as she walked deeper into the jungle, its eyes always watching, always alert. A part of her felt less alone. She found water dripping from a plant's wide leaves. She drank slowly, carefully, while the creature lapped the drops beside her. The water burned a little, but it didn't kill her. Not yet. Suddenly, the creature growled. It backed up, ears low, body shaking. She turned. A huge beast stood behind them. 6 legs, black fur, and eyes like burning coals. Its teeth were long and dripping. It roared so loud the ground shook. She ran. The creature followed. The beast crashed after them, smashing trees aside like twigs. She dodged left, then right, jumping over roots and ducking under branches. But the beast was fast, too fast. She could hear it getting closer. Then she saw it, a narrow space between 2 rocks, just wide enough for her to slip through. She dove inside. The small creature followed her. The big one tried, but it was too large. It slammed into the rocks, roaring with rage, claws scratching stone. But it couldn't reach them. The girl lay on the cold ground, gasping, heart thudding in her ears. The small creature curled next to her, trembling. After a long time, the beast gave up and disappeared into the jungle. She looked at the little one. "You saved me," she whispered. It tilted its head. She didn't smile. She couldn't. But for the first time, her chest didn't feel so heavy. The planet wanted her dead. Everything on it wanted her gone. But now, she had an ally. The next few hours were slow. She and the creature moved together, avoiding loud places, avoiding broken trees and blood trails. She noticed something strange. The monsters didn't fight randomly. They hunted with purpose. They protected their territory. They respected power. And they watched. Twice she saw glowing eyes from the trees, watching her, Once, she heard clicking sounds in the distance, not random, but like a language. Not words, but communication. This planet was not wild. It was alive. It was organized, and she needed to understand it before it killed her. That night, she found a cave hidden behind thick vines. The little creature sniffed the air, then curled up near the entrance. She built another fire with dry leaves and sticks. The flames were small, but warm. She sat against the wall and stared into the fire. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She thought. Back home, she had been smart. That's why they feared her. Here, she would use the same mind to survive. Maybe even more than survive. This planet thought it could break her. But she was still here. Still breathing. Still watching. And if these monsters had rules, she would learn them. Because monsters don't kill other monsters. They follow the strongest. And maybe, just maybe, she could become one of them. The next few days changed her. She wasn't the same girl who had crashed in fear and blood. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer controlled her. Now, it worked with her. Like a sharp edge she could hold in her hand. She had learned how to walk without making noise, how to spot movement before it became danger, how to feel when something was watching her, even in total silence. And she wasn't alone. The small creature, now limping less, followed her like a shadow. She named it Ash, not because it looked like ash, but because it survived like it. Always quiet, always hiding, always watching. Together, they moved through the jungle, becoming part of it. The jungle didn't welcome them. It tested them. Giant birds screamed from the trees, sometimes diving without warning. Razor worms crawled under the ground, sensing footsteps. She learned to step lightly, to sleep above the ground when she could, and to never stay in one place for more than one night. But even while she fought to survive, her mind stayed sharp. One morning, after a long rain, she found something strange, a symbol carved into a tree. It wasn't random. It looked like a spiral with 3 marks below it. Not made by nature, made by hands. Human hands. She stared at it for a long time. Could there be others? Survivors? Or worse, enemies? That night, she lit no fire. She and Ash hid under thick roots, listening to the jungle breathe. Just before sleep took her, she heard the clicking sound again, the one from before. Like language. Not human, not machine, but real. She decided to follow it. For hours she tracked the sound, moving through mud and thorns. Ash stayed close. Every time she got near the sound, it stopped. But she saw signs, large claw marks on trees, strange stones stacked in patterns, and once, what looked like a pile of bones, arranged like a nest. The planet wasn't just full of monsters. It was full of tribes. On the 5th day, she saw one of them. It stood at the edge of a cliff, tall and strange. Not human, but also not like the beast that had chased her before. This one wore armor made from bones and metal. Its skin was dark gray, its eyes yellow. In its hand, it held a spear made of some glowing stone. It didn't see her, but she saw how it moved. With purpose, with pride, with intelligence. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She watched it walk to the cliff's edge, look out over the jungle, then disappear into the trees again. Ash growled softly. Not fear. Warning. The message was clear. Do not follow. But the girl wasn't here just to survive anymore. She wanted to understand. Later, she returned to the spot where she had seen the creature. She found another symbol carved into stone. Same spiral, but this time with a different mark beneath it. An X with one line scratched out. A warning? A direction. She copied it into the dirt and studied it. Her time on this planet had changed her. She no longer thought like prey. She was starting to think like a predator, like a survivor. And survivors make plans. She climbed a tree, high above the jungle floor, and looked out. For the first time, she didn't feel lost. She saw patterns, where the bigger beasts moved, where nests were hidden, where the air smelled clean. She began mapping in her head, drawing invisible lines. This was not just wilderness. It was territory. And territory could be claimed. Later that night, Ash whimpered in its sleep. Something was coming. The air changed. The jungle went silent. She grabbed her sharpened stick, the closest thing to a weapon she had. Then she saw them. 3 creatures, not like the first one she'd seen. These were smaller, faster, more wild. Their skin was dark green, eyes glowing blue. They ran on all 4s but stood like humans when they paused. They circled her camp. She didn't run. She stood tall, heart pounding, fire in her blood. One creature hissed and rushed toward her. She didn't move. At the last second, she raised her weapon and stabbed forward. The creature stopped, just inches from her face, breathing hard. Its claws twitched, but it didn't attack. Then it backed away. The others followed it, fading into the jungle like ghosts. Ash came to her side, silent and tense. She understood now. They were testing her, and she had passed. She looked up at the red sky and whispered, "You want a ruler." She held out her arms, bruised and bloody. "Then you picked the wrong girl to kill." Days turned into weeks. The jungle no longer felt like a prison. It began to feel like home. The girl now moved with silence and speed. She had stopped flinching at sounds in the dark. Her skin was scratched and scarred, her clothes torn and patched with leaves and animal skin. But her eyes were sharper than ever. She had become something new. The little creature, Ash, was always near her. It had grown stronger too. It could now hunt small lizards and bring them to her. It watched her every move like a student learning from a teacher. She had also started learning, not just survival tricks, but language. Symbols were everywhere in the jungle, scratched into rocks, carved into trees, painted with blood or ash. She began to notice patterns. Circles meant safe, crosses meant danger, spirals. She wasn't sure yet, but they were important. The biggest beasts respected them. She also learned how to track the tribes. There were at least 3 kinds. One tribe wore bones and moved in packs, always howling. Another stayed in the cliffs, building sharp nests from glassy rock. And the third, the one that first watched her, they were calm, careful, and always watching from a distance. She wasn't part of them, not yet, but she knew they knew she existed. One evening, while gathering fruits from a tree with yellow flowers, she found something she didn't expect, a human voice. Weak, in pain. She dropped low and moved through the underbrush. Ash followed. In a clearing, she saw a man, human, covered in dirt, bleeding from his leg. He had crash gear on, the same as hers. His face was pale. He had a broken radio strapped to his chest. He wasn't dead. Yet. He saw her. "You. Help me," he whispered, voice cracking. She froze. So many memories rushed into her head. Betrayal, being thrown onto this planet. The pain, the fear. Her fists tightened. This was one of them. Maybe even one of the ones who voted to get rid of her. But then she looked closer. He was young, scared, alone, just like she had been. Ash growled low. She raised a hand to calm him, then stepped forward. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice cold. "They dropped us, said it was a test, said we had to prove we were worthy." She stared. So they were doing it again, testing people, sacrificing them, throwing them into death to see who survived, like they had done to her. She looked at the blood around his leg. He wouldn't last long without help. She turned to leave. "Please," he begged. "Don't leave me here. I don't want to die." Her steps slowed. Maybe she didn't owe him anything. Maybe it would be easy to just disappear back into the jungle. But then a dark thought entered her mind. What if she saved him? not as a friend, but as a tool. She needed to build something, a future. And a ruler didn't rule alone. She turned back. "I'll help you," she said, walking over and tearing cloth from her shirt to wrap his wound. "But if you lie to me, or slow me down, I'll leave you for the monsters." He nodded quickly. She built a stretcher from thick branches and vines, then dragged him back to her hidden camp. Ash didn't like it, but obeyed her command to stay quiet. Over the next few days, the man, whose name was Eric, healed slowly. He was weak and nervous, but he listened to her. He followed her instructions. He asked questions, and more importantly, he watched. One night he said, "You've survived here alone." "Yes," she answered. "Then you're the strongest person I've ever met." She didn't reply. She just stared into the fire, remembering the first night she had cried alone under the stars. Now fire danced in her eyes. The next morning, everything changed. The sky was dark, not from clouds, from smoke. A fire was coming, not wild, controlled. She climbed a tree and saw it. Torches, dozens of them. A hunting group, one of the tribes, heading straight toward her camp. They had found her, not by accident. She turned to Eric. "Can you run?" He nodded, shaky but ready. She grabbed her spear and the sharp stones she had shaped into blades. "Then it's time," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For them to learn," she whispered, eyes hard, "that I don't run anymore." The torches grew closer, their orange glow flickering through the trees. The girl could hear their heavy steps now, crunching on the dry leaves, talking to each other in low voices. Eric was still by her side, looking more nervous than ever. She could see the fear in his eyes, but he wasn't running. He was standing with her, ready to follow her lead. She couldn't waste any time now. The tribes that came for her were ruthless, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill. She gave him a quick look. "Stay low. Stay quiet." He nodded, swallowing hard. She grabbed a long vine and tied it to a tree branch, making a makeshift rope. She swung it over a gap between two trees. She was light on her feet, climbing up like she belonged in the jungle. Eric followed, but slower. The climb was hard for him, but he made it. They hid in the thick canopy of leaves, their breaths shallow. From up here, they had a clear view of the hunters below. The group was big, at least 10 or 12 warriors, armed with spears, clubs, and bows. The scent of smoke and blood filled the air. They were hunting something or someone, and they wouldn't stop until they had it. The girl looked at Eric, motioning for him to be quiet. The tribe stopped just beneath their hiding spot, scanning the area. They didn't know they were there, yet. The leader of the group, a tall man with bright red tattoos across his face, growled something in their language. The others spread out, searching the area. She had to make a move now, before they found their trail. She took a deep breath, steeled herself, and slid down the rope. The ground was soft, and she landed silently. Eric hesitated but followed, making less noise than she had expected. They were behind the hunters now, moving fast but staying low. She could feel the fire in her veins. This was her chance, her moment to show them all that she was no longer prey. She pulled out the spear she had crafted from sharp stone and wood. It was crude, but it would do. She waited, eyes locked on the leader. He was too close. If they didn't act now, they'd be spotted. She lunged first. The spear slammed into the leader's back. He let out a roar of pain and spun around, knocking his spear out of his hand. He was fast, but she was faster. Before he could recover, she jabbed again, this time cutting across his shoulder. He staggered back, eyes wide with shock. The others heard the commotion and turned to see the fight. It was too late. Eric rushed in, using his weight to tackle one of the warriors. The other hunters hesitated, unsure of what was happening. The girl didn't wait. She charged, using the chaos to her advantage. She swung the spear again, this time taking out one of the men who was reaching for his bow. The tribe was caught off guard. They were strong, yes, but they were not prepared for her. Within moments, she had killed or wounded 3 of them. The leader was still alive, but barely. He lay on the ground, gasping for air. She stood over him, her weapon raised. "This is my territory now," she said, voice cold and steady. The leader's eyes widened in disbelief. You think you can control us?" She didn't answer. Instead, she raised the spear high and brought it down with deadly precision. The tribe leader fell silent. The remaining warriors backed away, fear in their eyes. They had heard the stories. They knew of the girl who had survived the impossible. Now they were witnessing it firsthand. She was not just some girl. She was something else. She turned to Eric, who was panting but alive. "We're not done yet," she said, wiping blood from her hands. "We've only just begun." Eric nodded, wide-eyed. You really did it." "Don't get comfortable," she warned. "This is just the beginning." The tribe's survivors, seeing their leader dead and their numbers falling, scattered into the jungle, leaving behind their weapons and gear. They were defeated, and she was victorious. But this victory wasn't just about killing. It was about sending a message. To the beasts, to the tribes, to the planet. She was no longer a victim. She was no longer someone to be hunted. She was the hunter now. As the last of the hunters disappeared into the dark jungle, the girl looked at Eric. "Now, we take their weapons. We take their power." He stared at her in awe. "What do we do next?" She smiled, a cold, determined smile. "We find the others, and we take everything." The jungle was quiet. For the first time since her crash, the silence felt different. Not peaceful, but purposeful. She and Eric had stripped the remaining tribe of their weapons, their supplies, and their pride. They were now moving deeper into the jungle, a new plan forming in her mind. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was becoming something more. Every day, they grew stronger. The girl led, taking the front as they walked through the thick trees, Eric following behind. His body was recovering, but he still wasn't as fast or as strong as she was. She didn't mind. He was useful. He learned quickly, and that was what she needed. She couldn't do this alone. She had learned something in the last battle, something important. The tribes weren't just scattered groups of monsters. They were connected. They had different territories, but there was a common thread between them all. A shared belief, a shared power. The girl wanted that power. She wanted it all. "Where are we going?" Eric asked one afternoon, breaking the silence. She didn't turn to answer him immediately. Her eyes were scanning the jungle around them. She could feel it. The others were out there, watching. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was a threat, and threats had to be dealt with. "I'm going to find the one who controls this place," she said, her voice steady. "And when I do, I'll make them bow." Eric didn't ask who. He didn't need to. He knew. The leader of the third tribe, the ones who stayed hidden and watched from the shadows. She had seen them before. They were different, more careful, more dangerous, but she was different now too. They traveled for days, moving through the dense jungle, avoiding traps and creatures that had once terrified her. She had become a master of this world. She knew how to move with it, not against it. Finally, they reached the edge of the jungle, a high cliff overlooking a vast, open valley. The air was thin here, and she could see far into the distance. On the other side of the valley stood a massive fortress, built from stone and bones. It wasn't like the simple huts the other tribes lived in. This place was strong. It was old. And it was where the leader of the third tribe lived. She felt a thrill run through her veins. This was it. The heart of everything. The place where the power she needed was waiting. "We have to be careful," she said to Eric, her eyes narrowed. "They've been waiting for someone like me. They'll have traps. They'll have guards." Eric nodded, his eyes wide. "How do we get in?" She looked at him, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. We don't need to get in. We'll make them come to us. That night, they set a trap. Not for the monsters, not for the beasts, but for the tribe. The girl waited, crouching low in the dark, Eric beside her. They had covered themselves in mud, blending in with the ground. They had set the remnants of their battle from days before. Broken weapons, discarded shields, just out of sight. It was bait. The tribe would come for it. They would come for her. And when they did, she would be ready. Hours passed, the jungle alive with strange sounds, the calls of distant creatures, the rustling of leaves. But the girl never moved. She never let her eyes leave the shadows. Then it happened. The soft sound of footsteps, almost silent, but there. She could see the shape of a figure moving through the trees, cloaked in shadow. Then another, and another. They were coming. She waited, breath held, heart pounding in her chest. As they neared the trap, she stood up, drawing her spear. Eric did the same, though his hands shook. Now, she whispered. They struck. The first warrior, a tall woman with dark, scared skin, was caught off guard. She swung her sword, but the girl was faster. She dodged and plunged her spear into the woman's side. The others roared in surprise, drawing their weapons, but they were already surrounded. Eric tackled one to the ground, using the weight of his body to pin him down. The fight was quick. The girl moved like lightning, taking down one warrior after another, until the last one stood alone. This one was different, older, with a scared face and a worn spear. The leader. He snarled, his eyes full of fury. You think you can take this place from me? You think you can just walk in and... The girl didn't let him finish. She lunged, moving with the speed of a predator. She knocked his spear from his hand and threw him to the ground. You were wrong, she said coldly, standing over him. I'm not here to take anything. I'm here to rule. The leader's eyes flickered with fear. You are nothing. Just a girl. They will never follow you. She smirked. That's where you're wrong. With a swift motion, she raised her spear and finished it. The jungle fell silent. She stood there, breathing heavily, looking at the fallen body. She had done it. She had taken the first step towards something bigger, something no one had thought possible. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. Eric, she said, turning to him, gather the weapons. We need to prepare. For the first time since landing on this cursed planet, she felt the power she had been waiting for. The power to rule. And she was going to take it all. The fortress of bones and stone was silent. The girl stood at the entrance, her eyes scanning the horizon. The battle was over. The last of the tribe leaders lay dead at her feet. The power she had sought was now in her grasp. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. She turned back to Eric, who was standing a few paces behind her, still breathless from the fight. He had been with her since the beginning, and he was starting to understand her more every day. She didn't need him to follow her. He had chosen to. We did it, he said, looking around at the lifeless bodies of the tribe. It's over. She didn't answer. She had never been interested in endings, only beginnings. The girl raised her head and looked out over the valley. There were more tribes out there, stronger ones, bigger ones who would not take kindly to what she had done. She could feel the weight of the challenge ahead of her, but she wasn't afraid. She had been tested by this planet. She had fought monsters, beasts, and men who thought they could control her. And she had survived. No, more than survived. She had thrived. The girl clenched her fists. This is just the beginning, she said, her voice filled with determination. I've killed the leaders, but I need to control the land. All of it. Eric nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. He knew what she meant. She wasn't going to stop until she was in control of everything. The tribes, the monsters, the planet itself. And she was willing to do whatever it took. Where do we go next? Eric asked, his voice low. North, she replied without hesitation. The largest tribe lives there. They control the most territory. If we defeat them, the rest will fall in line. But we'll have to be smart about it. We can't just charge in. We need to build our strength first. Eric seemed to consider this for a moment, then nodded. He trusted her completely now. He had seen her do the impossible, again and again. He had seen how she commanded the world around her. The girl turned and began to walk toward the jungle again. It was no longer an unknown place of terror. It was her kingdom. Every step she took was another victory, another piece of land she had claimed. But this time, she wasn't just walking. She was marching toward her future. As they walked deeper into the jungle, Eric noticed something he hadn't before. The creatures that once prowled in fear of her were now keeping their distance, watching her from the shadows. The trees seemed to bend toward her, and the wind itself seemed to whisper her name. She had become the jungle's ruler without even trying. The planet itself seemed to recognize her power. She had done what no one had thought possible. She had been cast aside, thrown into a world of death, and had turned it into her throne. Her heart was no longer filled with hate or fear. It was filled with something much stronger. Purpose. She had always known this world would break her or make her stronger. She had chosen strength. And now, she would take what was hers. The path ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Nothing would stop her. Not the monsters, not the tribes, not the planet. She had been thrown to the wolves, but she had become the wolf. And now, she would reign.